Welcome to Casa de Maria. This is a space for writers, artists, and cultural storytellers who believe that our words carry memory, meaning, and responsibility. Here, we gather to reflect on craft, honored lived experience, and explore ethical pathways to publishing and creative growth. I am your host, Dr. Lima Luz Cabal, founder of Casa de Maria Publisher, and I am grateful you are here. Welcome back to Write, Reflect, Reimagine. Today's episode reveals the power of tapping into a writing community. Our work as writers does not completely thrive in isolation. It is best shaped through relationships with fellow writers. It takes form by connecting in shared writing spaces and open conversations about the writing we seek to grow. It beautifully blooms in the spaces where language is given permission to unfold. Some writing connections occur gradually. Others return to us when the time is just right. Today's conversation features award-winning poet Peggy Robles-Alvarado, whose work moves across the power of poetry into the art of performance and the beauty of community practice. My connection to Peggy began through Charlie Vasquez. Charlie is an author, arts administrator, and community-based literary advocate. His work has long supported underserved writers through initiatives such as the Bronx Memoir Project, made possible through public arts funding and institutional partnerships, including support from the National Endowment for the Arts. His work continues to center writing as both a creative and communal practice, where story becomes a vessel for what is remembered and what refuses to disappear. Now, several years ago, before I relocated to Puerto Rico, I listened to a conversation he hosted with Peggy on his podcast, Creative Presence. His podcast brings together voices from the healing arts and explores the relationship between creative practice and the importance of collective well-being. That conversation with Peggy and Charlie centered on fear, shame, and writing for community. It stayed with me. It lingered in the way certain lines do, returning when you are ready to hear them differently. As fate would have it, in June of 2024, I reconnected with Charlie at a cultural event at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies in New York City. I shared with him that I was moving to Puerto Rico to establish Casa de Maria Publisher. And in that moment between conversation and memory, Charlie encouraged me to reach out to Peggy Robles-Alvarado. Well, I am thankful that I did. Later that year, as I was taking a brief pause from the construction at Casa de Maria, I connected with Peggy, who also spends time on the island. Now, what began as an introduction became an opportunity to engage with her work and her presence within the broader literary community. We share a commitment to supporting writers and creating spaces where narrative and poetic writing can serve as a transformative practice. Peggy and I share a lot of common ground, one of those being education. Peggy holds 2 masters in education, as well as a Master of Fine Arts in Performance and Performance Studies. Her teaching career spans over 20 years. Now, with decades of experience across our respective teaching journeys, both as public school educators and university professors, we fully understand that writing is not just only a craft, but it's a practice that is nurtured, guided, and held with intention. After trying to support our students to become the best writers that they can be, we understand what it takes to motivate and inspire our students to take those risks. And that shared commitment continues to inform how we support community writers and create space for their voices. In Puerto Rico, Peggy and I have found ourselves in theaters and poetry houses and rooms where voices rise and settle, where stories are spoken into existence. These are the spaces that hold writers, spaces shaped not only by artists, but by a broader network of support for the arts, including institutions such as the Poets Passage and Teatro en Quince, supported by the Department of Art and Culture in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Our conversations after witnessing these performances have opened new ways of thinking about how we can continue to support a community of underrepresented and marginalized writers. I am grateful for the community that continues to take shape here in Borinquen across this beautiful archipelago. Peggy Robles-Alvarado is an award-winning educator, poet, creative writer, performer, playwright, and producer. She is a Jerome Hill Foundation Fellow in Literature and a 3-time International Latino Book Award winner and a Brio Award recipient, an award from the Bronx Council on the Arts recognizing artistic excellence. Bronx recognizes its own. Peggy is also the founder of Robles Rights Productions, a nonprofit organization through which she has created initiatives such as La Libreta Online and the Abuela Stories Project. Through this work, she continues to produce literary programs that support intergenerational storytelling, literacy, creativity, and equity, with a particular focus on uplifting women of color. Her latest poetry collection, Burn Me Back, published by Four Way Books, was selected as a 2025 Book List Editor's Choice for adult poetry. If you have not heard Peggy recite her poetry, you have not heard poetry. Peggy has received writing fellowships from Canto Mundo, Desert Nights, The Frost Place, the Ashbury Homeschool, Vona, Candela Playwrights, Dramatic Question Theater, NACLA. Her work appears in The Breakfast Poets, Volume 4, Latinx, Manteca, Great Weather for Media, and What Saves Us, as well as Poets.org. The Quarry at Split featured as the Softest Latine Theater Festival, Dodge Poetry Festival, Lincoln Center, HBO Habla Woman, the Smithsonian Institution, PEN America, Harvard University, and the Association of Writers and Writing Programs. As one reviewer from the Latinx Project at New York University writes, her work transforms the scars of migration, colonialism, and family trauma into a series of ritual flames. Well, Dr. Rojo Robles is spot on. Her writing does more than document experience. It carries it. It shapes it. It calls forward memory, ancestry, and the body as a site of knowing. It asks us to consider what we inherit and what we carry. It prompts us to think more about what it means to claim authorship over our narratives. I am thrilled to share that Peggy Robles-Alvarado will be featured in our author panel for our upcoming public program, What We Carry, What We Claim, Latina Writers on Voice, Memory, and Becoming, taking place on September 19th, 2026 at Dwight Hall at Yale University. Today's conversation invites us into that powerful place, a space where community and creative voice meet. It is an honor to welcome Peggy Robles-Alvarado.
Hola, hola.
It's great to have you here today with us.
It is my pleasure, mi placer estar aquí.
Can we help our audience get a sense of where we are right now?
Well, right now we are in Borinquen, We are on the northeast side in Luquillo, Puerto Rico, in a space that I use very much as my part-time workspace, creative hub. And it is by the things that I love and that inspire me and that heal me, by the ocean, by El Yunque, and by community.
I love it. Thank you for inviting me into your beautiful creative workspace. Your work lives at the intersection of poetry, performance, and community. And I love how those 3 points join. When you reflect on your journey, what has kept you rooted in poetry as your primary form of expression?
Well, like many people in the creative world, poetry saved my life. So I honor poetry and give back to it and feed it because it fed me at a really critical moment. But it's poetry is what saves me, and poetry is has become a platform or a springboard for other forms now. Because I also do some playwriting. I'm working on different formats of just expressing myself. I've done some installations that involve poetry and performance. But poetry is the root. Poetry is the root of everything that is creative in my life. And poetry picked me. I can't even say that I picked poetry. Poetry picked me. I did my first musings of poetry and performances on open mics in college when I started to learn about Black and Puerto Rican studies in Hunter College, when I was taught our history, which is so removed from elementary schools. And I realized I have this voice, this voice that was fed by New Yorican poets like Tato Laviera, Pedro Pietri, Sandra Maria Esteves. Those voices were the ones that I was introduced to at that time. And I realized, my God, this is the first time I see Cuchifrito in a poem. This is the first time I see, Pedro Pietri writing about cockroaches. Like, and not because they're not noble or they're not worth our space and time, but I have never seen that before. And I saw more of our community, the good, the bad, the in between, the hidden, the secretive, the shameful, the things that are not shameful, but we are taught to believe are shameful. So in meeting those poets, that's when I realized, well, wait a second, I have stories to tell too. And my stories are about being half Dominican, half Puerto Rican, raised in Washington Heights, with this deep connection of nostalgia to Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. So how can I tell these stories? And the stories are very performative because we are performative people. We talk with our hands. We move our body. We embody what we believe in. So why not? Why not try poetry? Why not try performance poetry? But it was poetry picked me, and I have been better for it ever since.
I love that. And I have to say, poetry has been something that burns bright in the work you do. And it is no surprise why your collection, Burn Me Back, has been described as transforming lived experience into something ritualistic and powerful. When you were writing this collection, what did discipline look like for you on a daily or weekly basis?
I have such an aversion to discipline. I have an aversion to discipline. I don't have an aversion to structure because I can outline 10 plays in a minute. I don't have an aversion to structure, but I have an aversion to the word, the idea of discipline as a writer, not in response to any other areas, but for writing. I have a problem with the word routine. That's also a big aversion for me. I prefer ritual. So I can handle a ritual, do a ritual, complete it, create it, organize it, let it move through my body. But as soon as I see the word routine, it's a shock to my system. Why? Because I was raised on discipline and I was raised in my teaching world with routines. And sometimes those are counterproductive to creativity for me. So I try not to bully myself into these kinds of discipline structures that are counterproductive. My storytelling is very organic. Now, that doesn't mean that I wait for inspiration. I don't wait for inspiration either because sometimes inspiration can be fickle. But I do believe that if I try to write and it's not writing, I'm not going to push myself, because what's going to end up happening is that I speak negatively about myself. I push myself into spaces of critique and criticism, and I don't want to do that with my artwork. I refuse to do that. So why would I bully something that has saved my life? I would much rather sit in a space and say, okay, let me try to write. And if it's coming, it's coming. But if it's not coming, then I'm going to retreat and say, okay, it's not for today. Maybe I'm going to draw something, or maybe I'm going to go take a walk, or maybe I'm going to research. I'm a very big fan of researching topics for poems, and then it creates this really different kind of animal on the poem. But I don't push myself in ways that remind me of discipline that was not productive to my creative self. Discipline is purposeful, but it can also hinder you if you are raised as a girl in a society where girls' voices are not necessarily valued. So, no discipline, no routine. Definitely rituals, definitely space for trial and error, definitely space to succeed or even fail that day, and definitely a space to pivot into other places where that could feed my writing. If I can't write, then well, let me watch a movie, a section of a movie that I know that inspires me and puts me in a really good place. Let me listen to music that I know is gonna get a character to speak to me. Let me dance. I dance. I may not be perfect, but I will go dance. I'm not afraid of being cringe. I'm not afraid of being recorded in public. I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I'll take a dance class, but I won't push myself to a place where then it becomes a criticism of what I didn't do that day. I didn't fulfill 5 pages, or I didn't write the whole scene. That I refuse to buy into that.
I love how you have really flipped it on its ear about disarming the word discipline and really diving into framing it as a ritual that when we think of rituals are just approached with such reverence, right? So looking at writing as a practice of reverence and honoring you, your voice as the writer. Now, I will say that there are many emerging poets that struggle with staying, let's say, consistent, right? What helped you remain committed to the work, especially when writing through difficult or personal material really is emotionally taxing?
I stayed committed because I couldn't. I couldn't stop. I tried to write different things, and I kept returning to my father's story, right? And my mother's uh, rearing of me and my brother. My community in Washington Heights before it was gentrified, where it was a very immigrant, migrant community, mostly Dominican. I kept returning to those poems, and honestly, if I keep returning to that place, it means that something in me and around me wants a voice. So as much as I tried to not write about my father, I kept returning to my father. My father passed, and that amplified the lens within me. And these poems kept pouring out, and they did pour out in a raw fashion. They weren't at all polished to what the book is now. But I did find this core piece in me, this almost like a seed, and I kept an avocado seed is what I like to say. And I kept trying to put the avocado seed away, and I was like, let me write about something else. Let me write about societal issues and what's happening in the world, and maybe that'll be more universal. And then I realized, no, 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 no. And the feedback I did receive once the book was done is that these stories are universal to the people that read my work, that don't find themselves in other poetry anthologies, who haven't seen poems like this, where you have a Dominican song about immigration embedded within verses about my mother crying in the kitchen talking to her mother. Um, the response to this work made me realize that this was bigger than I was. This was something ancestral and familial and deeply rooted in, like, we want to tell our stories through you. So I had to honor that. So I just kept working on it, but again with very loose timelines, until a friend of mine who I love to death, Ricardo Maldonado, gave my manuscript in its raw form, because I gave it to him in a messy raw form. I said, "Do you see anything in here that can become more?" And he championed my work, but he did not tell me that he gave it to his publisher. And I almost died because it was in a very raw state. It is not something that I would have shared with anyone in a publishing house. It would be my first book that was not self-published, because I do believe it's self-publishing. I come from that vein where in order to get through the gate, you got to create some doors as well. You must open some doors as well. You must create. You must document your life and have your own body of work. But this was the first time that my work was placed in the hands of a press, and the press responded really well to it. So again, all of these things happened because I could not stop the impulse to create it. I'd followed what I heard in my voice and my body, and then it created this body of work that became a collection of like family lore. But I realized that it wasn't just my family. My family was an extension of all the people in my community that were like, "Oh my God, that's my poem. This poem is what I would write." So I just kept picking at it, and of course the timeline accelerated once I signed the contract with Four Way Books. The timeline accelerated rapidly because now you have deadlines, right? And I don't even like the word deadlines. If you look up the history of deadlines, which I let all of y'all do, it's not a great history to that word. So I like to say destination goals. So it became a series of destination goals of like, okay, I have to get this part done. I have to edit this. But even in that, I was very excited to see the feedback from editors who had never experienced Spanglish poetry in this way. I was excited throughout the whole process. I cannot say that I was upset at any point about it. It was just a new learning experience, and I was still adamant and championing these poems that I would not compromise on.
I love that you offer destination goals as well as the part of your feedback journey, getting that feedback from a fellow colleague, someone that you trust to be able to give you that insight and have them deem it ready to share, even like you said, in its rawest form. Um, what role did community workshops offer in developing Burn Me Back, your book?
Oh, they're integral parts of my creative process. I am a student for my entire life in this dimension. I take workshops, paid workshops, free workshops. I take workshops from people of diverse backgrounds and knowledge. I take workshops in different genres, even if I'm not writing in that genre, because sometimes you'll take a fiction workshop and you end up writing the most amazing poem based on everything you learned in the fiction workshop. I take workshops with people that I admire who have biographies that are extremely impressive, but I also take workshops from brand new people because they have a new insight, a new lens into the world of poetry. I take workshops with my idols, my poetic idols, and I always say I never want to meet my poetic idols because in my mind they're perfect and I want to keep them that way. But I've taken workshops with my poetic idols. I've taken workshops with my poetic rivals, people that I don't resonate with, only because the other part of me wants to see what you're doing. What are you doing? I'm nosy that way, right? Creatively nosy. But I've also taken workshops that have nothing to do with poetry that feed and inform my creative muse. So I'll take a lot of dance workshops, even though I look crazy doing the movements. But I'm about to look into some swimming lessons or something completely out of the box because I want to continue working with water and talking about water. And not just from memory of being in water, but now being instructed in water. I want to see what that feels like and looks like and what that generates. But I take workshops all the time, and I invite, you know, this, Vilma, we went to bomba workshops.
Exactly.
And they're hard on the body, but they're feed the soul in a whole different way. So I definitely am an advocate for workshops, but I also create workshops. So I create what I don't see. If I don't see a workshop in the world that I'm looking for, then I invite people in and I have them as guest facilitators so that I can have that workshop also. I'm offering it to the community, but I'm also offering it to myself. Like, I need this workshop.
Well, I have attended your poetry workshops and I felt so encouraged seeing the poems that grew under your facilitation in my writer's notebook. Now, I will be honest with you, crossing over from memorist, right, writing a memoir to being a poet is a bit tough for me. It's challenging. And for poets who are sitting on notebooks of scattered drafts, what is one practical step that they can take to begin building toward a collection?
See, that's interesting because I have, no lie, I have almost more than 100 and something notebooks.
Wow.
I store them.
Wow.
I don't know what's going to happen with them, but I store them. And sometimes people say, well, don't you go back to those notebooks and look for things? And no, I don't, because I feel like they're time capsules. And I really believe in morning pages, and not morning pages, let me clarify, not morning pages from The Artist Way. That's a great program. But mourning as in grief. Mourning. 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 Sometimes those notebooks are full of mourning pages, of grief pages, of things that I've let go of already. They're gone. They're out of my body, out of my present eye, out of my third eye. So I don't like going back there. But if you do have a collection of like poems that you have that are still in your frame of mind as in the present being, that you're like, oh, maybe this could become something. What I tell people is, what is something that bothers you that you can't let go of? What is a theme that is bothering you, or a theme that you identify that you keep writing about? Even when the prompt has nothing to do with this. For example, for me, I kept writing about my father. And the prompt would be about a scientific formula, and here I am, the scientific formula of my father's body as it was in decline. What is it that has an urgency in you that you just can't shake? Then that is where you're going to find your collection. And it doesn't have to be 50 poems only about my father. Once I started committing to, okay, I need to take these poems about my father and see what else is in there, then I have to find the constellation. What are other things around my father as the main North Star? What are the other stars around him that influence our relationship? You know, my mother, my aunts, and their very loud personalities, the people in my community, the alcoholism, the functioning alcoholism, right? So all of those became these constellations around my father as the North Star. And that's what I tell poets. Like, what's your North Star? What's the thing that aggravates you, loves you, also annoys you, but can't leave you? And then what are the other things around that you can fill to complete this story, right? To complete this manuscript. And I do manuscript reviews, and I always ask that people love to say, oh, can I just send you this and tell me what you think? And I always say, give me 3 questions that you want me to answer. And they take forever. Because they can't identify what 3 things they want to know. So, and I don't offer any questions as possible suggestions until they come to me with something. Because within that, I'm forcing them to ask those to themselves. What is it that you're writing about? What is it that you really want to know? Or do you want to just hear this is a great manuscript? Because that's not going to happen. You know, I can tell you that, but then that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in the sense of like, it's not going to evolve. You know, not to say that giving critique is has to be cruel. It never, for me, it never is. I will never give cruel critique. This is someone's body of work. This is someone's budding baby, right? But I don't want to hear this is great, this is great, this is great. I want you to challenge me. What forms? One of the questions that I asked people when I gave my manuscript to them, aside from Ricardo Maldonado, I gave it to Ura Joan Noel, who was instrumental. I gave it to Yesenia Montilla. But Yesenia Montilla did a great job editing, but Ura Joan Noel gave me like 6 pages of personal, one by one feedback to poems. I was like, oh my God. Based on the fact that I said, I want you to tell me if the first poem is the strongest poem that you see, or if the last poem is the best poem to end this collection. Are there poems that you think are weak, that are not finished? Are there poems that are redundant? And he offered so much more just by me saying that. So
wow.
Think about what you want people to critique on, not just, is this great? Yes, it's great. You wrote it. But what more can it be?
Well, I love the way you've illuminated your process, right? From being fed in community workshops, being able to pull it together, right? Deciding what is the nexus, your North Star of your work, and really just honing in on that. And then being in that very vulnerable space of asking for feedback, right? And being very pointed in requesting the feedback, which is all about the work that brings me to your nonprofit work. I mean, you offer these workshops. I've been a participant. I walked away feeling so encouraged. The pace is exhilarating. Being able to come into a space and listen to amazing poets, hold a mirror to yourself a little bit. It ups the ante. It reminds you you do have to dig deep and be able to say, I've got this. And you've created those powerful spaces through your organization, Robles Productions. Now, what inspired you to build these community centered writing spaces?
Robles Rights Productions happened during COVID, at the height of COVID. It became and the new career, to be honest. I decided that I was going to retire from formal teaching at a time that was really important for me to move out of that space. Not because I don't love teaching, I love teaching. I love students. I love my students. I've even had students. As a matter of fact, in the workshop you were in, we had a student who was, oh my God, she was 30 years old and she was like, I was in your elementary class.
And she wasn't sure she can call you Peggy. She felt weird about that.
She was like, I don't know if I should call you Peggy or Miss Robles. And I was like, this is beautiful. But it came at a moment where I needed to pivot away from formalized teaching. And I'm very glad I did, because I think I saved my life, my sanity, my mental state, my body. COVID brought a lot of challenges to really great teachers, and some of them did not survive it. But Robles Rights Productions became my second career in this dimension. And it came from a need. Again, I was teaching online workshops all throughout COVID, internationally for another organization. And I decided, like, I need to do this for myself. Because when you work for someone, you have restraints, you have things you have to conform on. And I was like, I'm tired of this. I want to do things and I want to learn new things. Again, I'm a lifelong learner, and sometimes to my own detriment, because it is stressful not to know things. But if you don't start, you will never know. If you wait to start, you will never start. If you wait to be perfect in knowing everything, you will never begin. So I just decided, let me start this nonprofit and see what happens. So Robles Rights Productions is a 501c3 organization. It creates literary events that foster intergenerational communal healing, literacy, creativity, and equity for the Bronx and beyond. And we support and publish writers of color with a very special focus on women writers. So I started teaching these very specialized workshops thanks to micro grants from the Bronx Council on the Arts, from poets and writers, and from my own income from artist grants that were given to me for me to produce my own work. I always set aside money from those grants because I feel like that's my giving back. That is my reciprocity to the world, to give back these workshops. And honest to God, I would sit there and just dream, like, what would be an ideal workshop for me that I would want to participate in as a new writer? What did I not get that I want to get? If I was a new writer right now with all the tools in my box, right? In my toolbox. So I designed all these different ways to kind of scaffold poetry for new writers or seasoned writers that just want to be involved in my approach. And that's how it started. And everything from that has been La Libreta Online, is an online literary journal for women of color. Abuela Stories was also a micro grant that turned into an anthology and now exists as an online archive that anyone can submit to, abuelastories.com.
Love that.
So if you have a story about your abuela, you can write it in there. And abuela could be good, bad, awful, in between, anything you want. Abuela could even be imagined if you never got to meet her. Because what inspired that was my abuela, my Puerto Rican abuela, who I never got to meet, but definitely was speaking into my ear the whole time. So we also have like the workshop that you participated in, which is very fast.
Prompts. Yeah, the energy, it was such a great pace. I think because what happens personally for me, I get into a little bit of a procrastinator kind of mode. And there was no place to hide in that workshop. Like it was, that's the point. There's no place to hide. You're held accountable. And the best part, I have to tell you, is when everyone shares at the end and that inner voice that says, oh, it's not ready. You just suppress it because you realize everyone else put themselves out there and they're sharing. So I love that you are offering this communal space and where your philosophy of designing those spaces is living in every book that is being filled with pages of writing. I love that. And having attended your online workshops, there is that very distinct level of energy. And, you feel like you have to show up and be present.
Yeah, that's a particular series. It's called Prompt, Pen, and Pass. It's very fast paced. It's very prompt. You got to prompt, you got to write, and that's it. And I also write alongside you.
Yes, so I saw that.
I'm positively stressing myself as well because, again, this is I don't like to put people in positions where they're stressed and I'm calm, or they're vulnerable and I'm the almighty speaker. Community means community. It means everybody's hands are in. Mm-hmm. And I'm very tired of the model of community workshops where the facilitator has, of course, this level of power, but it is so stratified that the community feels alienated in some way. And I don't like that.
And they don't feel like they're in the inn.
No, they're not in the inn. It's like you are always the person that they have to look at in a certain light. And I'm like, no.
Yes.
So that's one program. We have another one we just got funded. We did one as a pilot a few years ago, and I'm really excited that we just got a micro grant to continue it. It's called Book Bochinche.
I love that.
And Book Bochinche is where it's a unconventional book talk where we break that barrier.
Can you, because we have listeners from almost 20 countries where they may not know where the word bochinche means.
Oh, I love it.
So give us the tea. What does bochinche mean?
The bochinche is gossip. Bochinche is gossip.
It's the book gossip.
It's the book gossip. And it is an unconventional approach to a book talk. So what we do is we break the wall, that barrier that exists between author and an audience. Because a lot of the times what people fail to realize is that the audience is full of writers. You're giving up your time to go to this book talk. You could be anywhere else in the world. You're there because you're secretly a writer. Mm. So what we do is that in this book bochinche, or this gossip about books, we have the author offer a writing prompt to the audience, but the audience, they have to also come with questions for the audience. So it's not just that this author is standing in this place of power and this separation. It is a community talk. And they're virtual, so anyone in the world can participate.
I love it. It's like a virtual town hall. Yes. Getting into this author's brain about their process.
But the author has to get into the brain of the writers. So they have to come ready, because of course the audience is going to want to have questions. That's already a given. But in this book talk, the author has to come with questions for the audience. They have to come ready to have this engagement with a mini workshop. And the host reads original poetry based on the book of the author. So there's engagement in many different levels. It is not a one-sided linear conversation, which we are very accustomed to. You go to a book talk, you're sitting in the audience, this person is sitting on stage. There is no conversation. You're there to passively listen.
It's really one voice mostly talking and maybe a moderator.
Correct.
Yes.
For us, it's going to be an informal, very chatty, very gossipy talk about what this author does, what this author doesn't do. We did a pilot with Darel Alejandro Holmes a few years ago, and I piloted because I wanted to see what worked, what didn't, and if it could work for our community. It was the funniest experience, and he came ready. He had his prompts, he had his talk, he offered so much, and the community loved it. They were in their homes, comfortable, but they felt like they were in a communal, physical space because of the intimacy of the conversation. So we're looking forward to launching that now. But I have a lot of things up my sleeve that are coming. I have a 6-part series workshop that is going to be coming up soon. It's sponsored by Body Books and Cafe, which is Rafiana Martinez's new baby. That is her creation. And she was actually a student at Lehman College who learned of my work, and we started a conversation. And And I said, you need to do that. Whatever your dream is, you need to do. And she's literally started Body Books and Cafe this like last year in 2025.
Wow.
So yeah.
I'm excited. So many wonderful projects on the horizon. But I will tell you, it's impressive to see how you've kept a pulse on what the needs of the community are. And we have to be comfortable knowing that sometimes that will change, right? And pivot and make those changes.
Mm-hmm.
At Casa de Maria Publisher, our webinars are asynchronous. They're not live. And so they're meant to be reflective. Now, this allows writers to kind of return to the work in their own time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how you see the relationship between structured community spaces like yours
Mm-hmm.
and more independent, reflective writing spaces.
How do I see
your
approach?
Interactive,
Mm-hmm.
a present login, everyone's in the space, and how is it maybe returning to folks who are doing asynchronous work on their own time?
I'll be really honest. I am I have a framework for an asynchronous program. I haven't launched it yet, and this is where people have been asking me, like, when's it gonna happen? it's and I'm gonna speak to that. It's called Alter to Alter. Alter to Alter is it's a literary format for writers, and it helps them. It's a coursework basically to help them see how their spirituality, their divinity, their God self can be useful in creating work, whatever genre they're in. And I launched a coming soon about a year and a half ago. And it's, there's live workshops, there's asynchronous material, there's different things to download, but I put a pause on it. And it's honestly because my spirit told me, wait. And again, this, Vilma, when you start something new, sometimes there's blind spots.
Yes.
And we don't realize it.
You need beta readers. Yeah. You need people to experience it. And I'll be very honest with you. One of our challenges is we put the work out there and we have to go through the process, trademarking everything, copyrights, because, our work is out to support new writers, marginalized writers, underrepresented writers. But we know that when we offer something free, there's always the risk that someone can appropriate it and misuse it.
Yes.
But at the same time, the challenge is if that's what everyone is doing, keeping close, huddling and gatekeeping, then how are we breaking barriers?
Correct.
So I love that you press pause and you were listening to that inner voice that said, wait a minute, what would you like to wait for? To be able to present
this is what happened. I said wait, and then I said, oh, hold on. Let me trickle. And like you said, beta experiences are really important. So I started trickling little aspects of the program in live sessions to see, 1, the response, 2, the impact, 3, to see if there was anything that I needed to tweak because maybe it didn't play out the way I anticipated it. So I started taking elements of it and doing it in workshops. The 6-part series that's coming out with Body Books and Cafe has elements of this alter to alter sequence. And I do it that way because I want to see what blind spots I have, but also, like you said, the legal protections of it. So I realized I'm throwing out this really high quality baby that I'm developing into a world where I don't see, it doesn't have a cradle yet. Like it doesn't have a net, a safety net to protect my intellectual property, my IP. So I had to do that legwork first.
No, very important that you do.
And it's separate.
I believe that's important to do.
Absolutely. And it's separate, completely separate from the nonprofit. This is not something that's the nonprofit work. So I'm very glad that I was listening to my protective guides who were like, hey, you're missing information. Because if not, I would have made very serious mistakes that would have muddled my nonprofit. This is work aside from the nonprofit.
So you decided it's like this is a branch of your own creative space,
correct,
separate and apart from the nonprofit work. And that your work is the reason why I think you weighed it is because everything you do, Peggy, is so mission centered about making a difference, encouraging and building. But I love that you were protective of this work as well, just as writers should be protective of their writing, before they submit anything to anyone. does that person, is there a non-disclosure form? As well as, are they, when you submit your manuscript, is that person understanding that this is just for review, this is not for publication yet?
Correct.
And that it's protected, that person's privacy is protected. For Casa de Maria Publisher, our subscription page, our manuscript subscription page, is it's so riddled with fine print, because we want writers to feel safe submitting their work.
Yes.
They have to read agreement forms. They have to do forms to show this is where my document lives, and only Casa de Maria Publisher and myself can see that document.
And retain your rights.
And retain your rights. I get very nervous when we see publishing or independent presses that will say, send us your work. And I really am uncomfortable that there isn't any form that says that this work is for a certain time. It's only going to be used for this review. It worries me because so many people are taken advantage of.
Well, we sadly, right, the profession of writing has been demonized back in the day, right? If you were a writer or a poet,
right?
Oh, that was the worst. But also,
and especially if the content was not mainstream,
correct?
If it was a bit in a different strata.
That, and we have been very much victimized. That's why I say equity in my mission statement. We have been victimized. They don't want to pay poets what they're worth. People will tell you, well, there's no money in poetry. Write a novel, a fiction novel. And it's like, why is that? And I question that all the time. But it's also because I've had experiences where I've been approached by major players where, oh, we want to publish this book in our collection or anthology or in our workbooks or in our blah, 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 insert. Right? Insert whatever.
And where do we talk about royalties?
That's exactly it. So they'll send you a paragraph contract. And I read that and I was like, excuse me.
I'm not releasing my work.
I am not losing the rights to my work. And it'll say perpetuity. So they want to own your words for life and not pay you. And I have reached out to other poets saying, did you sign the contract from so-and-so? And they're like, oh my God, yeah, I can't wait to see my...
just to be published.
Because we are fed this myth that we must live in scarcity. We must take what is given because, quote, poetry is not going to get you money. That is not true. A lot of the people that are big players in poetry knew that was a farce from the beginning. A lot of creative people know that that's a lie. But you have to know that that's a lie. You have to understand what you're reading. You have to understand that if there's no contract, you offer a contract. Offer a contract. You don't have a contract? I got a contract.
I got you. No worries. This is my contract.
Yeah, and I think another part of this has to be transparent with your peers. I have faced this before early in my poetic journey where other poets wouldn't tell me. I would contact them and be like, hey, how much do you charge for this kind of gig? Or how much do I charge for this kind of
to kind of get a sense,
to get a gauge?
Yes,
they wouldn't share that information, or they had no idea, or they would be like, "I charge this," and it's like, "Well, that doesn't sound right," because there is no kind of place to really point, no kind of North Star for that. There's no kind of anchor where you can say, "This is what I charge, and this is the norm." There is no norm. People develop that as they go. So then I started seeing my peers that had established full careers, full lives on poetry alone. And I said, okay, where's the workshop for this? And some of them did a workshop, the business of writing poetry. Then where are those? And I sought those out. And then I realized they have a scale. This is my non-negotiable fee scale. This is my non-negotiable contract if the person comes to me and wants to publish my work and they don't have a contract. So this is like the business side. And this is the part that a lot of poets don't like because it is not fun. Running a 501c3 and now this other entity that I'm developing is not fun. It's admin work, and that kills a lot of the times your creative spirit because you've done, this, Vilma, we've talked about this. Yes. We've talked about this part.
Not easy. A part of your creative voice dies a little bit. And you have to really be protective of that. And that's why I went to workshops like yours to remind myself, I am a writer. I want to be a poet. I want to dive into poetry more. So I set my focus, but it's so important. And you really due diligence, being able to to question the work. Sadly, and we're going to talk more about this in our upcoming event at Yale University in September, about honoring our authorship, our voice, our memory, especially at a time in the industry where the stories that get published, or the most provocative body of literature that gets published, is usually the most that are riddled with trauma and the most compelling, really horrific story. And we understand that for a long time, many of our poets of color, our writers of color, that transformative writing has saved them, right? But there comes a point where publishing houses only will attract people with the most challenging of stories, because they don't want mainstream coming from us. And guess what? I just want to write about my grandmother's poetry. I just want to write about flowers. I want to write about what it felt like to visit my ancestral home. And guess what? There wasn't any drama.
Exactly.
Like, those moments we deserve too. And sadly, many of these larger publishing houses are only going to keep those manuscripts on their desk. Anything else, they just throw it by the wayside. So your work is so important because it reminds writers that there is a future space for them. And not only in being fed through your nonprofit, but as well as being a part of the Casa de Maria publisher writing community. Now, for someone who's listening right now, who feels called to write, but is probably feeling unsure where to begin, what would you say to them?
Well, I'm gonna answer that, and I'm also gonna speak on what you just said about writing about delight, because you struck a chord in me, and I want to make sure that people understand you don't have to write trauma all the time. That is so important. I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a poet, Ross Gay, who wrote a book of delights, and it's beautiful and it's pleasant, and people really gravitate towards it. And I just want to make sure that people understand that the Book of Delights for people of color exists.
Yes.
Ross
we have
Gay,
many delightful moments and experiences in
we
our
have
lives.
many delightful moments and hilarious moments. And maybe what's pressing to your chest is a delightful moment. So it's important to get those out, right? I just had to bring up Ross Gay's book, The Book of Delights, because I read it, and it is a book of delights. There's no, there's no traumatic incident. It's a lot of gardening and fruit and food and things, and I think those are such valuable stories to tell.
And maybe someone's feeling called to write about delights, or being called to write about, their funniest teaching moments, or being called to write about life as a New York City train conductor and the irony of what is being witnessed every day, or someone who works in a school cafeteria and has had to see, children who are hungry and still have a safe space here in that school, and how it felt to create relationship with that young person, and how the custodian and the cafeteria staff are kind of like the surrogate parents of this young person. You never know. So many beautiful, delightful moments, moments that reminds us of the human condition, our humanity.
Yes.
And so I love that you're telling folks that are called to write, just get it out there.
Listen, you're going to write. I'm going to give you a perfect example. I'm currently doing a 30-30. If you don't know what 30-30 is, April is Poetry Month. And what a lot of poets do is they'll write one poem a day for the whole month. I have tried this before and quit, because it is not as glamorous.
Something about the discipline, I think.
Yeah. I've tried it before and I've quit. It's been too much, because I also had a whole entire career that took up a lot of my just physical energy.
Right.
Now I'm in a different career space, so I have a lot more physical energy. I'll have a lot more mental energy. If you've ever taught in elementary school, you know that your energy is compromised on a daily basis. You're performing for 8 hours straight. So it is exhausting.
You're in the parking lot and you're tapping the top of your car going, I tap out, I tap out.
Yes. You're taking naps during lunch rather than eating because your body is like, we can't handle this much
I get it.
stimulation. So it was very hard for me to do that. But this year, because again, my situation just energetically has shifted, I sought out a group of 5 other women, very diverse, and we do it online, just very simple, nothing crazy, nothing stressful. So I've been doing a poem a day, and some days it's a haiku, and some days it's a
which don't sleep. Haikus can be complex.
Don't sleep. Haikus can be complex. I got a series of haikus in Burn Me Back that I was like, how did I do this?
Fire.
But some days it's a haiku, and some days, like last night. Last night I was trying to get to bed early so that we can have this and I can be all fresh-faced and bushy-tailed, cute. No. I ended up getting really down this rabbit hole of what I wanted to write about. And it was funny because I came to a point in the poem where I was like, this doesn't resonate with me. And it was a point of trauma. And I said, this doesn't need to be here. I'm just going to tell you the title because I really like the poem, but the title is The Devil Doesn't Wear Prada. And I'm talking about...
What were the pain points there?
But the devil doesn't wear Prada. But I was reflecting on how we tend to be our own enemies sometimes. But there was one line that really, I couldn't sit with it. I couldn't send it to my peers because I felt like it was unnecessary trauma. And so I removed it and I shifted it and I turned it into something else. Because the whole point of the poem is talking about the devils that we carry. We always say God lives in us, right? And Tosaki Shange says, I found God in myself and I loved her fiercely. Mm-hmm. And Tosaki Shange was one of my poetic, heroes and a point in my constellation that I turned to. But I think there's also a devil in us, right? The good and the bad. I strongly believe we have good and bad in us.
The naysayer in us, right? That
what happens
cancels what we want to create immediately without even finishing.
Yeah. And part of the program Altar to Altar is talking about that, about what people call the devils or what people call the fears, or it's personifying them and sitting them down and really realizing they're not there to really harm you. They're there to kind of protect you because they're trying to keep you safe, right? Fear is trying to keep you safe. But this devil that people like to say, like, the devil made me do it. It came from me watching a movie where this person kept saying, the devil made me do it, right? This is where I get inspiration. Everything around me, everything.
Well, we got to be careful around you because just like comics, family members of comics, they always get a little nervous because they draw inspiration from the personalities. So I'm curious to know the personas.
Well, let me tell you, my first ever Brio Award in poetry, where I got unrestricted, beautiful monetary award from the Bronx Council of the Arts, was a performance piece video that I wrote in response to boys not dating me in college. The title is super long. It's called To All the Boys in College Who Decided Not to Date Me After Finding Out I Was a Single Mother.
Wow.
And that poem was a response to all that.
But that's what you carried in that moment.
Yes.
And you claimed it. And that is the power of your work with your nonprofit, to be able to support writers, to say, this is what you carry, this is what you can claim for you. And I'm excited to hear more about Altar to Altar, but I love that you're doing your due diligence you're also, sometimes I believe ideas need an incubation period. They need a space to sit. I know that for us, being able to do the webinars and being able to get to a space where we offer free content, we grappled with what do we put out there? Yeah. And so it was mainly based on the feedback we were getting from folks who were saying what were their frustrations in the writing journey. And I feel like you have really addressed a lot of those for our future poets. I love that. 30 poems in 30 days. Oh, no. You have an accountability network. Yes. You have someone, and it, like you said, no stress, right? So you guys have touch points with each other. Of course, you're dealing with pain points, right? In your writing. And you, by the way, when you chose to change the poem, was it for you or was it for your audience?
No, it was for me.
Mm.
I don't write for a particular audience unless I am commissioned to do so purposefully. If I am commissioned from an organization or by an organization by a person that wants a specific thing, then yes, of course, that is important. I do not like when I go to places and I'm performing alongside other people and they don't pivot. I am a person who I walk into a space, I may have a completely set plan. I got 4 poems. This is what I was hired to do. And I walk in a space and I realize, oh no, this is not going to work here. This is not going to work. I will have 6 other poems in the back just in case. Why? Because I find that if I could push through and read those 6 poems, but is it going to leave the impact that I want to leave, me? But when I write, I do not do that for an audience. I write for what it is burning through me that I have to get out. That title, The Devil Wears Prada, I was watching a commercial for The Devil Wears Prada, the movie that's coming out, and I was like, devil doesn't wear Prada. And then I started prompting myself like I would another person.
What would
the devil wear? And where the hell does this devil live? Right. And what are we doing? And how does that relate to what I've written for Altar to Altar? Because we don't talk about devils in Altar to Altar, but we talk about those voices.
Right.
The self-deprecation. That all comes from a program that I don't subscribe to. People like to say, oh, I write shitty drafts. I don't say that.
I've heard you tell the writers in your workshop that there will be no self-deprecating comments whatsoever.
That's one of my community agreements in every workshop that I begin. Whether it be fast-paced or slow-paced or a series sequence that feeds off of each session, there is nothing of that allowed. I do not allow, oh, this is a shitty draft,
It is a beautiful seedling right now that needs to be nurtured.
Why would you say that? So for me, I don't write for the audience unless I am commissioned. I've been commissioned in very particular situations where I'm like, oh my God, I have to get this poem out and it has to be about this, or it has to include that, or it's going to be in memorial, right? A memorial poem, a eulogy type, a poem that's going to be in service of this social act. So if I have guidelines, then it's different. Then yes, you have to think about your audience and the people who hired you. Right. But if it's you writing for yourself, no, ma'am, I'm not censoring myself, and I'm not going to compromise my Spanglish or my Spanish word, or I'm not giving you a translation.
I love that you have such ownership of your authorship, and you have given yourself, and I'm sure it's taken time, you've been in this journey, but for a new writer or someone who's just in this space where they're diving into a new genre, I hear the phrase, it's going to be the title of our upcoming event, what we carry, what we claim. What does that mean for you at this particular junction in your life? What we carry, what we claim. What does that mean for you?
Some of the things that we carry are not things that we were born with. We carry things that we were given or forced to carry. And we have to decide what part of that is what we claim. So for me, I used to write in Spanglish from the beginning of time, and I was always told, don't write in Spanglish. Nobody's going to publish your work in Spanglish. Don't use these words or these ideas because that's not going to get you published. That wasn't my concern. I always knew what I claimed was my poems will always find a home. And if I can't find a home, I will build one, which is why I'm a proponent for self-publishing, because I learned the process. I learned how to lay out a book. I learned what it takes to actually build a book from the first syllable to the last page of acknowledgments. That's why I understood when my publisher came to me and said, well, these poems, we can't format. And I said, no worries. I got you. So yes. I format.
Yes.
I understood the labor that was involved. You would have to hire someone to then format these poems.
I know, they're beautiful art. They're arts. It's artwork on page. When I was flipping through your book and read it from cover to cover, I was very impressed with the layout. I think it's so important, right? Especially in self-publishing, to have a guide, to have the services that are anchored in professional standards, because sadly there is a metric out there, and I believe that as women of color, as marginalized writers and underrepresented writers, it's almost like that metric gets up the ante a little higher, and you feel like you're always going to come short. So I love that you're a proponent for self-publishing and for getting the support to be able to carry, right, and claim and own, this is what I'm doing. I'm not letting go of my Spanglish. No. I'm not letting go of these themes. I'm going to keep going with that.
And self-publishing doesn't mean it has to be subpar. My first book was an experiment, and it was a gift to my daughter. It was only 10 poems, and it was 10 poems of our journey together, and I wanted her to read it. It was for her. And then I asked her permission if I could read it to the world. That book has mistakes. It has things missing. It will not change. I will not re-edit it.
Don't change it.
Because it is a time capsule of what we went through. And the purpose really wasn't for the public. It was for me and her to heal. It became the launching pad for my poetic career. But thereafter, I got editors. I had help. I had people who I paid. Charlie Vasquez was one of them, who I paid to edit one of my books. So let's be clear that self-publishing doesn't mean subpar. It doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to. If you have the right team with you, also the community, and that's what our work today for this episode has been about, honing in on community, locking arms in community of writers. I think that there's images of a writer, and somehow you think they're in a dark room in front of a laptop, and they're like,
well, sometimes I am.
They're hermits, and they've turned off their phone, okay, so that happens sometimes, but the reality is that you need community. You need
community. You write on your own, you write independently, but then you need to branch it out into the world, and that's important. Not for acceptance. That's another thing I claim.
Thank you.
It's not for acceptance. You're not putting your baby in the world so that people can be like, oh, we like it or we hate it. That's not it. You're putting it out in the world because it is important to document your life and your talent. Documenting your life and your talent is what we are here for. And people who tell, oh, well, you're not going to get through this gateway. You're never going to be published. You're never going to do this. You're never going to do that. Listen, there's many artists in the visual arts world who have passed, and then all of a sudden their works are masterpieces. Why did we have to wait till they pass?
Yes.
So, lo que me van a dar, que me lo den en vida. Do it while we are alive. And that means you have to be brave enough to claim and document your existence through whatever art form it is. For me, it is poetry. For you, Vilma, it was memoir. You need, and now La Casa de Maria Publishers. You need to build your legacy, whatever that looks like. And people get scared of the word legacy because they think something big and grandiose. Legacy could be just you creating a scrapbook from your family for your family to look at and have. When you go on into your next dimension, they'll be like, this is what they left us, right? Legacy can be you creating Casa de Maria Publishers. Legacy could be that book I wrote for my daughter with 10 poems. Legacy can be my granddaughter who is now writing poems.
Oh my goodness.
Who move things in people. You heard her poem and it was like, good Lord.
I was floored.
Yes.
I was so impressed.
That's legacy.
And what I love about this legacy work, Peggy, is that it's about not only, right, lifting others up, but removing the gates. The barriers, enough of the gatekeeping, and everyone kind of keeps the success a secret. And people say, "Well, what's in it for you? You know, what does that look like on the ledger? You know
what it looks like? It looks like my ancestors receiving me in the next dimension, going, "Thank you for speaking about me. Thank you for saying my name. Thank you for telling about my rocking chair and my stories. Thank you for putting my name in a book when I couldn't write. I was illiterate, but you wrote me in." That's what that looks like.
That's what that looks like.
That's what that looks like to me and to you. We are writing in the people who are, even today, look at how we are being erased. Our books are banned. Our books are burned in a celebratory ceremony because we are so damn scary. We are so damn scary that you got to ban our books.
And this legacy work is tied to that purpose.
That is right.
To not be erased.
That's right.
To be in a space where we hold record.
Correct.
And guess what? We are the record keepers.
Correct.
No one's keeping records of us.
No one's keeping record of us. So we have to do it. And I'm telling you, people make it seem like it's so impossible because we have been trained to stay small. I'm a 4'11" woman, and I walk in the room like I own it because I did not come here.
I'm a witness to that.
Yes, I did not come here
You are not playing.
No, I did not come here. If my ancestors and my spiritual guides and God picked me to be a big mouth, then I'm gonna be the biggest boca grande that I can be. I always say magic making is not for pendejas. Magic making is not for suckers, because you have to fight those.
I bought the bag. I have the button. Yes, it's real. This is yours.
Yes.
Say it again.
Magic making is not for pendejas.
I love it.
You cannot live in a place where you are told. I was told always, you are so small, you're so little. Even to this day, when people try to belittle me, oh, you're so little. But I walk big, bitch. Like, I am not here to live a small life.
No.
And if that means I got to create with my hands, with my own two hands, I got to create books and experiences and workshops and models and online places to publish people and anthologies. I've created 2 anthologies of women writers. The first one being the Abuela Stories Project, and the second one being Mujeres, the Magic, the Movement, and the Muse. And those were all women who, majority, had never been published before. Holding a book with your name and your words in it
that must
is impactful.
Wow.
So for me, if my life is a series of impactful moments, right, that blip the matrix, right,
major blips, major,
and find ways to
you're bending. You're like that Keanu Reeves bending backwards.
The Matrix. That's my husband's favorite movie for a reason, right?
Yes.
I think that we have to get out of this conditioning that, well, I'm too old to do this, or it's gonna take me too much money, or my voice is not that important, or it's not that loud, or I've never been on a microphone. This is why open mics are important. This is why workshop spaces where you share are important. This is why going to those places where you think it's not important to you, let me tell you. My one experience with my first book, again, 10 poems written for my daughter, thought it was just for us. People kept asking me to read from it because they were like, you need to read these poems. I went to NYU. I was invited to an NYU for a poetry program, and I had no idea who the audience would be. Didn't know whether there would be women of color, and I didn't know anything. I just showed up with faith. Something told me go. And I was in a room with more than 100 Jewish little old ladies. And I said, oh, I don't know if these poems are going to resonate.
I'm so glad you didn't pivot.
No,
you kept your course.
I went.
Yeah.
And I read poems from that little 10-book self-published chapbook. And a woman came up to me. I will never forget. She came up to me. I will not say her name because she was adamant. It was our private conversation, but I will tell the context of it. She came up to me, and this is me, brand new poet, in the world, claiming, carrying and claiming it.
Yes.
She comes up to me and she says, you know the poem that you wrote about being a teen mom and being heavily abused and people not understanding that because they see you as a statistic? I said, yes. She said, that's me. She said, that was me. And this is a Jewish little woman. We have very different lived experiences.
It's a universal thread that tied your hearts together. It was like a red string of love, humanity. And guess what? In that moment, she did not feel erased.
She didn't.
Her moment mattered. Her experiences mattered. And you reminded her.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe very quietly she was carrying that, but wasn't ready to claim it. Mm-hmm. And who knows what you might have sparked in that audience member be able to bring that to a fold.
Incredible, where she was like, that story was my story. Never in a million years would I have said that woman and I had a common thread. She came from a completely different generation, a completely different lived experience, a completely different family background. She said that was me. And we broke into tears because we were both like, you see me and I see you. And it was just a moment that said, this little 10-poem book is going to move people. And it did. And I ended up donating a bunch of them to homeless shelters, to women's domestic violence shelters. I did a lot of readings in those spaces because they had so much to write about.
They needed that transformative space to heal.
It was tough.
Wow.
And although I have evolved from that space, given the time now that we're living in, I'm constantly asked to go back to that moment and share poems about that in different spaces. And I have to be very delicate with myself.
Right. Self-care is important. You have to listen to your body. this work is about almost literary shape-shifting.
Yes.
You have to be in that space ready. But I will tell you, and you are a beautiful reminder of this, being here in Borinquen, being able to have that encounter where we connected and now we're just like joining superpowers in terms of, right, encouraging each other, holding each other accountable. I feel like that's what community does. Community for a writer is what they need. I think isolation or fear is your kryptonite. And we have to be very careful. We need to tap into those different circles because community is where it all kind of pulls through.
Yeah, but we also finding the right community. Because I've been in communal spaces and writing retreats where my work was not valued, not encouraged. I will never forget my experience at a retreat that I paid a lot of money for, that I was very excited about. When I got there, I got into my circle. Everybody was divided into these circles that you would spend the rest of the 5-day retreat with. And my circle were writing about birds and sky.
Delights.
All delight. Not even. It was, it was landscape poetry.
It was landscape poetry.
It was landscape poetry and phrastic poetry about art. Everyone was so scared to show who they were. It was all exterior writing, what I call exterior writing, which is out there. I'm observing out there. I'm witnessing out there.
Keep things on the surface.
Yeah.
Yes.
And here I come with my body of work, which I submitted to get into this retreat. And my body of work is very personal and very, charged with different kinds of energy. And I remember sharing, and I heard from this one particular woman, "Your work is disturbing." And I said, "What?" So
you got to find the right community.
You have to find the right community that's going to challenge you, but nurture you. Challenge you and nurture you. Because we don't need that. All that, your work is disturbing. And guess what? The work that she calls so disturbing, that experience did halt my writing. Again, I wasn't ready to claim anything. I wasn't ready to, that was something I carried for 2 years. I did not write a word. I could not finish certain projects. I felt so defeated leaving that retreat because everything I shared, they didn't find any value in. So when I left there, this wonderful poet, Thomas Fukuloro, who comes to a lot of my poetry workshops, and he's based in Staten Island, he said, "Peggy, send me poems. I'm doing an anthology. I really want you to be included." And I said, "All I have is these poems, man."
And you're already feeling like...
And I was already feeling defeated.
The mustard.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he said, "No, I need you to send me some work." And I sent him this poem called Swelter, and he published it on the spot. He was like, "This is the one I want." The one that they found disturbing, which, you want to know what was so disturbing? My mother working in a sweatshop.
Wow. They couldn't identify. They couldn't connect. And community is about connecting, like I mentioned earlier, locking arms, even in those most uncomfortable moments. That role of that writer in that moment was to hold space with you. And she didn't do that.
I think it's also important to have community norms. It is dangerous to call on community and then not have any kind of normative values that anchor the space in respect, right? So we were
it's like an agreement, an understanding that because in the spirit of creation, this is how we thrive if these norms are in place.
Yeah. Why are you going to put me in a circle? Now it's dangerous for my well-being because you don't have any norms. You don't have anything we can commit to. You don't have anything common ground that we can say, okay, I check this, I'm with that. It was too free for all for me.
Yeah, a little too kumbaya.
Yeah, yes. A little too free for all.
You need structure in certain respects, especially establishing those agreements and those norms.
I think, yeah.
Especially when what everyone is carrying and claiming, I'm sorry, but you're bringing forward ancestral blessings that are being revealed and promises being released. And it's so sad that people are not seeing the value of that work.
Yeah.
And you've been true to yourself, Peggy, as a writer. You've been true to community, carving out spaces that honor the next generation of writers. And I can't wait to hear you speak at our author panel in September at Yale University's Dwight Hall. Man, bring it. It's going to be amazing. I want to just thank you for carving out the time today in your writing schedule, because this is your creative season. So I don't take this time for granted, and I want to thank you. Are there any closing words that you have for our audience?
I am going to say that, again, if you do not write yourself in, they will make sure that you are gone. And many of us, everybody, is a natural born storyteller. I say this and people go, no, not me. I don't know how to do that. I'm not a good storyteller. I said, have you lied to your mother? If you've ever lied to your mother, you are
a story creator.
If you've ever lied to your lover or your partner, you're a storyteller. If you've ever lied at a job, you're a storyteller. So everybody is born a storyteller. Every child I ever encountered in my teaching practice is a storyteller. And what the difference is, again, going back to what we carry and what we claim. We carry sometimes these voices that are not ours, that tell you, don't say that because that's not good for you to say. There's no value in your words. Why are you embarrassing the family by telling all our secrets? Those are all the things that we end up carrying that are not ours. So I need people to claim their voices, claim their stories. Tell it in whatever way you want. A storytelling session, a piece of art, in a collage. It could be a poem, it could be a fiction, it could be a memoir. Any kind of art form, you must. It is imperative because we are living in times where we are banned and erased. So please claim the storyteller in you. Claim that little liar.
Bring it.
Because that little liar got things to say.
I love it. The bochinche.
The bochinche.
The bochinche. Wow. Peggy, thank you. Thank you so much. And as we close today's conversation, I just want to return to what we have been holding light to throughout this whole episode, that writing is not something we do alone. It is shaped in community. Writing is strengthened through practice. It is carried forward through spaces that allow us to listen, to reflect, and to return to the page with greater clarity and intention. And today, Peggy, you reminded us that writing needs something of us. It asks for honesty. It asks for ritual. And it asks for a willingness to stay with the work, even when it's difficult and even when the path is not fully clear. And yet, what also becomes clear is that we do not have to do that work in isolation. These are spaces, they're communities, they're spaces where all of this will be nurtured and held. And everything is not going to be perfect. Like, look what happened with your manuscript. Mm-hmm. And you may not feel fully ready, but the time is now. Correct. Ahora. So begin where you are. Return to that page and seek out those spaces where your work and your contribution is going to be held with care and good intention. And so we are excited to be able to share Peggy's work through Robles Writing Productions on our contributor page, along with other additional details about her initiatives and the ways that you can connect with her through her website and social media handles. These spaces exist to support your growth as writers and in ways that are thoughtful, intentional, and rooted in community. Your story carries meaning, and we're so happy that we got to hear Peggy's story today, her journey, what she decided to carry, and what she is deciding to claim atrevidamente.
That's right.
You're not alone in this process, writers. We're here waiting for you. Muchísimas gracias de Borinquen. Hasta luego. Thank you for spending this time with me. If today's conversation resonated, I invite you to explore our free webinars, writing retreats in Puerto Rico, and our curated anthologies at Casa de Maria Publisher. Your voice matters. Your story deserves care. Until next time, write with intention and courage. Pen your passion. Publish your promise at Casa de Maria Publisher.